It's October 21st here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with North Korea military support for Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has called on Ukraine's partners to issue a stern response to involvement by North Korean forces in Russia's war with Ukraine, warning of deeper threats that will come as the North learns modern warfare techniques. At least 87 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike that hit several multi-story buildings in northern Gaza over the weekend. The United Nations is warning that the nightmare in Gaza is intensifying. The 2024 Korea Baseball Organization League Korean series will officially kick off on Monday evening. The Samsung Lions, who won the KBO League playoffs, will face the Gia Tigers. Ukraine is seeking a stronger reaction to North Korean involvement in the Ukraine crisis, with President Zelenskyy raising the alarm that a greater involvement by Pyongyang could be harmful for everyone. Moon Hae-ryun starts us off.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy called for the international community to take a tougher stance against North Korea amid continued speculation that it will become more involved in Russia's war against Ukraine. In a video address on Sunday, Zelenskyy cited satellite imagery and video evidence, suggesting that North Korea is not only supplying Russia with equipment, but also sending troops to the front lines. He said that he was grateful to leaders who acknowledged Pyongyang's involvement and expects a normal, honest, strong reaction from allies. The Ukrainian president further warned that greater North Korean involvement would be detrimental to everyone should its troops become trained for modern warfare. The satellite images Zelenskyy mentioned were disclosed by South Korea's intelligence agency as evidence of North Korea's troop deployment to Russia. The National Intelligence Service on Sunday revealed 3 pictures with a press release saying that the North had already deployed 1,500 Special Forces troops to Russia as of October 8th, after confirming direct military cooperation between Russia and North Korea on Friday. The images include a black and white satellite image depicting a Russian vessel departing from the North Korean port of Cheongdam, which is believed to be carrying North Korean soldiers. 2 images were attributed to international satellite imagery company Airbus, while the third unattributed photo was said to be captured by a South Korean government satellite using synthetic aperture radar technology. SAR involves transmitting radar waves at a target and processing the reflected signals to create an image. After receiving news of Pyongyang's involvement, Seoul's top office reported that President Yoon Suk-yeol presided over an emergency security meeting and recognized that the continued expansion of military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow is not only a threat to South Korea's security, but also the international community. In addition to the satellite images, the Ukrainian government released 2 more pieces of evidence suggesting that North Korean troops have been deployed to Russia to support its war effort. The first is a video in which soldiers can be seen receiving supplies from Russian troops at a training ground, with audio of individuals speaking in Korean. The second is a questionnaire that appears to have been prepared by Russia for North Korean soldiers to provide measurements for military uniforms, including hats and shoes. The questionnaires focus on summer uniforms despite the region's current cooler temperatures, raises questions about its timing. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Even after the death of Hamas's leader Yahya Sinwar, Israel is continuing its offensives, killing dozens in an airstrike in northern Gaza. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The Israeli military is continuing its offensives in Gaza, despite the death of Hamas's leader Yahya Sinwar. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, at least 87 people were killed by an Israeli airstrike in northern Gaza on Sunday. The ministry said 40 civilians were among the dead. However, the Israeli military says while it's confirming the exact number of casualties, its initial investigation shows that Hamas has exaggerated the figures. It added that the military is trying to avoid causing harm to civilians. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant announced on Sunday that Israeli attacks targeting pro-Iranian militant group Hezbollah in southern Lebanon are intensifying. He added that the IDF has been successful so far in not only defeating its enemy, but also destroying areas that Hezbollah had tried to use to launch airstrikes against Israel. Over the weekend, a drone was launched toward the residence of Israel's leader Benjamin Netanyahu in what he described as an assassination attempt. According to Netanyahu, the assassination attempt on him and his wife by Hezbollah was a grave mistake, and he vowed to continue fighting. The Israeli Prime Minister also spoke with former President Donald Trump on Saturday, where he emphasized that while Israel takes into account the issues Washington raises, it will be his country that will ultimately make the decisions based on its national interests. Thousands of protesters also took to the streets of Tel Aviv on Saturday, calling on the Israeli leader to sign a ceasefire deal that would lead to the release of the Israeli hostages. Relatives of hostages also took part in the protest, saying negotiations were long overdue. It's believed that 101 Israeli hostages are still being held captive by Hamas since the October 7, 2023 attack that sparked the current war in the region. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Evidence is pouring in indicating the arrival of North Korean soldiers in Russia to fight with Russian forces. Yet the West, including the U.S., has yet to confirm that this is the case. We're joined by Dr. Squid Norber for more. Welcome back.
Delighted to be back.
So regarding the questionnaire that asks North Korean soldiers to provide their sizes for hats, uniforms, and shoes, how much proof is it that North Koreans are actually in Russia to serve in the war?
Well, this is something that we've been considering for quite some time, certainly since the June meeting between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russia's President Vladimir Putin. And it sounded at that time like they had spoken of some agreement in terms of a manpower transfer. There does appear to be evidence. This is one bit of it. Clearly, the satellite imagery is important, what the NIS, the National Intelligence Service, has released, as well as these videos and the suggestion that facial recognition technology may well be confirming North Koreans in places like Vladivostok, where the special forces, some 1,500 reportedly, have arrived. There's also been suggestion that there may be North Koreans massing in places like Ulan-Ude and Buryatia in Russia. So we'll be looking very closely. Clearly, the fact that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has raised this, has spoken of as many as 10,000, warrants very real concern. And of course, with the visit between the South Korean and British foreign ministers this week, we'll give them a lot to talk about, as well as for the Americans, the South Koreans and the Japanese, as an international community in their continuing efforts to curb this type of misadventure.
Well, like you said, the rumor has been going around for quite some time. But the question is, why is Russia not commenting on, as far as intel agencies' confirmation that North Korea is sending 10,000 soldiers to Russia, like you said?
There's nothing to be gained for Russia in admitting this. In fact, what it does is it points to weaknesses. It points to the attrition of Russia in terms of its own military capability. The fact that it would need to bring in North Koreans speaks of tremendous loss in Russia, well over 300,000 killed there, perhaps as many as 500,000, and looking for new reserves, whether those are Russians that are brought in from factories and North Korea's replaced them, whether it's North Koreans on the battlefield. Clearly, he has reached out to Chechens and others, and this raises the concern that the conflict is becoming increasingly globalized in Ukraine to involve the North Koreans beyond the very lethal missile technology they have provided. We have seen missiles on the fields there, and we know that there are munitions at the ready, some 8 million rounds so far, over 13,000 crates of munitions that have been brought in. So a really tremendous concern about what has been transferred from North Korea, especially since this leaders meeting. And now, especially in terms of the concern of North Koreans on the battlefield, potentially there, or at least backfilling Russians who then turn to the battlefield.
Well, it makes sense for Russia not to admit the rumor because it'll do no good for Russia. But the U.S. is also yet to confirm the speculation. Why is that? Is there any special reason why it's being so cautious?
Oh, I think the United States and the entire international community are looking at this very, very closely. The Ukraine burden is a tremendous one, Gaza as well, as you've just pointed out in your last report. And they want to make sure they get this right. The United States and South Korea and Japan on their trilateral response in terms of an international mechanism. We've just seen a step up of a new mechanism to monitor sanctions violations, but they'll be looking at this very closely. There's a lot of concern about the fact that this may turn into a broader conflict if we see North Koreans on the field there. So whether we're talking about 1,500 special warfare component personnel, whether it is the 10,000 that Vladimir Zelenskyy is concerned about, or many tens of thousands, perhaps many more than that, this warrants real international concern. It's also a violation of United Nations resolutions, Resolution 2397 from December of 2017, which went into effect on in December of 2019, which does not permit foreign workers. Whether you classify military assistance this way or not, it still is a violation of a code that Russia and China have committed to. So the broader specter of having North Korea in really warrants concern because it leads to an escalatory effect, and we do not need a rise of tensions neither around Ukraine nor on the Korean Peninsula. And remember, the North Koreans are looking at this to gather important intelligence information on how well their weaponry and their men perform on the field if that does become the case.
Well, let's say the speculation does turn out to be true. What steps should or will be taken by the international community, including, Seoul and Washington?
It will require a tremendous amount of coordination. Clearly, again, the fact that the UK foreign minister is in Seoul to meet with South Korea's foreign minister is important. The entire European Union would need to mobilize with common interests like the US, South Korea, Japan trilateral, partners like Australia, New Zealand, India, and others. But there will be some sort of very calculated response. And of course, within the halls of the United Nations, where Russia has already put tremendous duress because of its aggression in Ukraine, and the idea that there will need to be some sort of mediation and some sort of movement there, and the UN Security Council will no doubt be very concerned about this. So it's a direct challenge to the entire international community, as well as of concern to the United States, South Korea, and its partners.
Dr. Norberg, before I let you go, North Korea also claimed on Saturday that it discovered some of the remains of at least one drone sent from South Korea, describing it as the same type displayed on Seoul's Armed Forces Day that took place earlier this month. The question is, one, how likely is it that it belongs to South Korea? And two, why do you think Seoul's military says it's not even worth mentioning on the accusation?
Well, again, there's no benefit in sort of acknowledging it, whether it is a South Korean drone or not. That is the danger, though, of using these drones to respond to the balloons. A back and forth in terms of drone technology is not a good prospect. Of course, North Korea has developed its own interest and has a partnership with Iran. Iran has deployed crude drone technology in Ukraine that has proved very lethal, and that may become a factor in the Middle East conflict as well. So we need to be very careful in terms of how we proceed here, and this is a time when we need to de-escalate and try to avoid these types of things because it just simply stokes the fire of hardliners. And one thing North Korea did say is if they see more of this, they will react, but to this point, they've, other than in terms of a verbal reaction, hesitated to physically react to it. Of course, this was in response, if it is a South Korean drone, to the North Korean balloon incursions. And of course, that has implications for civil aviation safety, among others. So we really need to look at this and try to find ways to step down this type of exchange, drone, balloon, and otherwise, and create a safer airspace and make calmer heads prevail here.
Indeed, Dr. Norberg, thank you so much for your insights. As always, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Delighted to be back. Aloha.
Game 1 of the 2024 KBO League Korean Series will take place Monday evening between the regular season champions, the Gia Tigers, and the Samsung Lions. The Gia Tigers had a direct bye to the Korean Series, while the Samsung Lions sealed the team's spot by beating defending champions, the LG Twins, in 4 games on Saturday. Now, Game 1 will take place at Gia Champions Field at 6:30 p.m. And James and Neil will take the mound for the Tigers, while Wontaine will start for the Lions. In the 2024 regular season, the two teams have faced off 16 times, with Gia winning 12 of those games. Author Kang's ambition to write 3 more books within the next 6 years is raising hope and excitement for more great pieces to look forward to. But her winning of the Nobel Literature is also paving the way for Korean literature to flourish. An Sung-jin reports.
The first Asian woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature, author Kang is being praised as Korean literature's equivalent of K-pop's BTS, both leading figures that reflect Korean culture in the world.
I think this is very nice because I think Korean literature is very good and deserves more recognition, especially abroad.
Seeing an Asian female author in this generation win an award and especially the Nobel Prize is such a big thing, and I do think it's a really big gateway for a lot of females and a lot of minorities to.
As well as garnering attention outside of Korea, Han is igniting a small light that is bringing positive change, especially in the printing and publishing industry. This printing company, which had been seeing a decrease in revenue over recent years, has suddenly seen a surge in the number of copies printed.
Kang's novels are flying off the shelves after her Nobel Prize win. This printing company has been working day and night to meet the demand.
After the announcement, staff at this company have turned in their weekend to cater to the requests.
I feel great and thankful to her. I hope more authors get the chance so the publishing company can become even more dynamic. With fewer people reading books these days, I'm hoping this will turn things around.
Written in Korean, her books are easily approachable and enjoyable for domestic readers.
I felt proud as a Korean because I was able to read the book in Korean without having to worry about understanding the nuance or the meaning like other award-winning books.
Kang's win is a milestone for Korean literature, but some say more is needed to be done to really develop Korean literature.
I think it's necessary to foster a reading culture which allows people to read and buy books at libraries or bookstores for more occasions like these. It's important because I think Korea still lacks that bit.
Many in the literature industry hope that her Nobel Prize win will rejuvenate the fiction market and potentially even lead to a new boom. Han Sung-jin, Arirang News.
A Korean cooking competition on Netflix, Culinary Class Wars, has gone viral, reviving taste buds around the globe. And one of the 100 contestants says he holds a special place in his heart for Korean cooking and Korean flavors. Our Song Yoo-jin spoke to him.
나에게는 에드워드라는 미국 이름이 있지만 저는 한국 이름도 있어요. 나에게 한국 이름은 균입니다. 그래서 이 요리는 이균이 만들었어요.
It looks like tteokbokki, Korea's beloved street food, but it's actually a creamy semi-freddo paired with a drink made of Korean melon, minari, and makgeolli. Chef Edward Lee's final creation on Netflix's Culinary Class Wars is a symbol of the journey he's embarked on throughout the show. So why did the winner of Iron Chef America and White House State Dinner guest chef choose to return to competition? In an exclusive interview with Arirang News, Chef Lee explains why.
I've been lately sort of rediscovering a lot of my Korean food heritage. And it just so happened that around the same time, it was a way for me to tell a personal story.
Chef Lee's culinary journey began and flourished in New York before moving to Kentucky and later Washington, D.C. Though he has spent most of his life in the U.S., his connection to Korea has always remained strong.
Even when I wasn't cooking Korean food, I always use Korean flavors, whether it's gochujang or doenjang or kanjang or, the things. I grew up eating my grandmother's Korean food. And I think that's just part of my DNA.
Culinary Class Wars gave Chef Lee a unique chance to reconnect with that heritage through food. Throughout the show, he challenged himself to step away from his comfort zone, Southern American cuisine, and mostly try dishes he'd never cooked before.
the culture of Korea seems so far away, but it's really not. And it's also part of my culture too. There's a lot of people who have been saying, especially Korean Americans, who have been saying that I've never seen my story told on TV in such a big stage.
Cooking has been Chef Lee's dream since he was 10 years old. But over the years, it has evolved into something much more meaningful.
There is something just magical about being in a room full of people eating and smiling and laughing and having conversations. And I think you don't get that energy anywhere else.
So, what's next for the celebrated chef? He isn't planning to slow down anytime soon to get his job done.
Ultimately, my job as a chef is to bring happiness to people. And if I can continue to do that, then I've done my job.
Edward Lee started Culinary Class Wars as the world-renowned chef many of us know. But by the end, he has revealed something deeper to the world. He's not just Edward Lee. He's Edward Kyun Lee.
요즘에 너무너무 행복하고 너무 감사합니다.
송유진, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the globe with our Kim Xiang. Good morning, Xiang.
Good morning, Dami.
So let's begin today with updates on the two U.S. presidential candidates. What's the latest on their campaign trails?
Of course, now with just over 2 weeks until the November 5th U.S. presidential election, both candidates, Democrat Kamala Harris and Republican Donald Trump, spent the weekend campaigning in swing states. Now, according to the latest national polls from 538 and ABC News, incumbent Vice President Harris is 2 percentage points ahead, as both she and Trump have been focusing their campaigns on the 7 swing states that may make or break their victory. In an interview with MSNBC on Sunday, Harris reacted to a derogatory term used by Trump in Pennsylvania the day before to describe her performance by saying the American people deserve so much better. Now, Harris added that a president should set a standard not only nationally but internationally, adding that Trump's behavior demeans the office. Trump remains in the key swing state on Sunday, where he spent time at a McDonald's in suburban Philadelphia, working the fryer and at the drive-through window. He said the McDonald's photo op was a jab at Harris, who he said had not provided any evidence to back up claims she worked at the fast food chain during her college years. Harris also celebrated her 60th birthday on Sunday, which she kicked off with a visit to a church in Georgia. Now, moving on, Mexico's Navy has arrested 23 people in its largest ever drug bust, seizing some 8.4 metric tons of drugs off the country's southwestern Pacific coast. Mexico's Secretariat of the Navy stated on Friday that the bust represents the largest amount of drugs seized in a maritime operation unprecedented in history, and that the confiscated goods were valued at around $105 million. The Mexican Navy also said it had seized some 9,000 liters of fuel and 6 boats off the coast of Lázaro Cárdenas, and that the distribution of drugs in the small boats and 1 submersible vessel required complex action. The largest drug bust in Mexico's history was 23 tons of Colombian cocaine in 2007. In the U.S. state of Georgia, at least 7 people died on Saturday after part of a ferry dock collapsed, plunging at least 20 people into the water. Georgia's Department of Natural Resources, which oversees the marsh landing dock on Sapelo Island, said that the collapse occurred at around 4:30 p.m. local time as people waited for the ferry. They had gathered at Sapelo Island on Saturday to mark Culture Day, an annual festival that celebrates the island's historic black community.
Seoraksan Mountain in Gangwon-do saw the season's first snow on Sunday, which fell a couple of days earlier than last year. And the chillier morning called for autumn hot drinks earlier in the day. Many inner regions had single-digit morning temperatures this morning. Seoul saw even lower daily lows than Sunday, the lowest of the season so far. Meanwhile, most of the southern provinces will be rainy today, starting from Jeju this morning, spreading to the rest of southern parts of Korea before expanding nationwide tomorrow. Jeju and the coast along Gyeongsang-Namdo province could see more than 100 millimeters of downpours along with strong winds. Central regions will be under cloudy skies all day today, with highs going 2 to 5 degrees higher nationwide. Seoul and Daejeon should get up to 20 degrees Celsius. Busan not too bad at 24 degrees. Now this band of rain will bring colder air, dropping morning temperatures down to just 6 degrees Celsius here in the capital on Thursday morning. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. Have a wonderful start to the week.